Ladies and gentlemen, we've all been there standing in front of someone who hurt us, listening to the words we've waited so long to hear, "I'm sorry," and for a moment it feels like everything might be okay. But then days pass, weeks pass, and suddenly the same patterns start to resurface, because the truth is, apologies can sound beautiful, but they don't mean much without follow through, and in love, in friendship, in life. It's not the words that build trust, it's what happens next. Today, I want to talk to you about something deeper than forgiveness, something stronger than just saying the right thing. I want to talk to you about consistency. Because the people who care don't just apologize, they adjust. Silence is often misunderstood. When you stop replying, when you stop reaching out, when you remove your energy from someone who has taken it for granted, people start whispering things like, "You're being dramatic," or "You're playing games," but the truth is, silence is rarely a game. It's often the final language of someone who has been pushed to their edge with no other way to be heard. You didn't go silent because you had nothing to say. You went silent because everything you said was ignored, because every time you tried to explain how you felt, your words were minimized, twisted, or dismissed, because when you showed vulnerability, they showed indifference. Silence in those moments becomes an act of self-preservation. It's not a power play. It's not a strategy. It's a boundary. People who are used to you being available all the time emotionally, mentally, even physically get uncomfortable when you're not. They've gotten used to the version of you that overextends, explains, overcommits. So when you shift into silence, it feels abrupt to them. They may say you're being unfair or cold, but they forget that your silence is not something that happened suddenly. It was built quietly over time. Every unanswered message, every broken promise, every time they said, "I'm sorry," but did it again anyway, every moment they left you confused while expecting you to remain loyal, that silence they're now hearing from you is not an absence. It's a presence, your presence returning back to yourself. When you finally draw that invisible line and stop giving to someone who only shows up halfway, it doesn't make you heartless, it makes you honest. Because the most honest thing you can sometimes say is nothing at all. You begin to understand something important, that the energy you spend trying to explain what should be obvious is energy wasted. And if someone only listens when you're silent, then maybe they never truly wanted to understand you. They just wanted your noise to fill their silence. Silence becomes the reset, the moment you break the cycle. The line between what you once allowed and what you now won't. And it's not rooted in bitterness, it's rooted in clarity. You see things now. You see that if you keep rewarding inconsistency with access, it teaches people that your time, your love, your presence can be bought with the bare minimum, that they don't need to grow or show up differently because you'll stay anyway. But silence removes that comfort. It replaces the chase with stillness, and that stillness is powerful, because in that stillness they are forced to sit with themselves, not your explanations, not your forgiveness, not your emotional labor, just themselves and the echo of what they lost. And you start healing. You begin to realize how loud your own needs have been, how often they've gone unheard, and for the first time in a long time, you start listening to yourself. You're no longer performing your worth for someone to notice. You're no longer negotiating your standards just to keep someone around. You're no longer making excuses for actions that don't align with the words they say. You're finally honoring the person who matters most, you. Silence draws a new kind of line, not out of spite, but out of strength. It says, if you're not here with respect, I'm not available. It says, if you're going to keep me confused, I'd rather be clear alone. It says, I've said all I needed to say, and now it's time for you to feel the space you created. And not everyone will understand your silence. That's okay. It wasn't meant for them. It was meant for you. to protect your peace, to reclaim your center, to stop over-explaining yourself to people who were never really listening, because at the end of the day, silence isn't a wall, it's a filter. And once you stop explaining yourself to those who never respected your words, you'll realize how much lighter life feels when you no longer carry the weight of trying to be heard by someone who never really valued your voice in the first place. One of the most exhausting things a person can do is try to prove their value to someone who refuses to see it. You bend, you stretch, you overgive, you go out of your way to accommodate, to please, to show them that you're worth staying for. You put effort into texts that barely get replies. You try to fix what they broke with their inconsistency, and you keep hoping that one more gesture, one more conversation, one more chance will finally make them see it. But here's the truth: value doesn't have to be proven when it's already respected. People who truly see your value won't need convincing. They won't need you to fight for their attention, beg for clarity, or constantly justify why you deserve consistency. When someone genuinely respects you, they meet you where you are. They don't treat your kindness like a currency that can be spent at their convenience. They see your heart, your effort, your presence, and they respond with presence of their own. When you're constantly trying to prove your worth, you unintentionally place it in their hands. You make it dependent on their recognition, their approval, their attention, and the moment that happens, you start shrinking. You start performing, you overthink every message, every pause, every delayed reply. You stop being yourself and start being the version of you that you think they'll finally want, and that version is exhausting to maintain. Because it's not real, it's not you. The people who are meant to be in your life won't need to be convinced to treat you well. They won't confuse silence with strength or flakiness with mystery. They won't make you feel like you're asking for too much just because you're asking for the bare minimum: honesty, consistency, presence. You won't have to chase respect, you'll feel it. It will show up in how they speak to you, how they show up for you, how they don't leave you questioning their intentions. If someone can't see your value unless you're constantly proving it, that's not love, it's validation seeking. And love that depends on validation is never stable. It keeps you stuck in a cycle where you're always trying to be enough for someone who isn't ready to receive you. It becomes a loop of almosts and maybes and one more tries, and in the process you lose touch with what you truly deserve. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be seen, but there is something deeply wrong with staying in spaces where you have to keep auditioning for the role of worthy. Your value was never meant to be a performance. It's meant to be a presence, and the right people will feel that without you needing to raise your voice or dim your light, you are not too much, you're not too sensitive, too emotional, too deep. You are simply someone who feels deeply and gives authentically, and those qualities should be cherished, not treated like weaknesses. Anyone who makes you feel like you're hard to love is telling you more about their capacity than your worth. What you bring to the table, your kindness, your loyalty, your attention to detail, your emotional awareness is not ordinary, it's rare, and the person who truly respects you will know that. They'll show up without being chased. They'll listen without being begged. They'll choose you without making you feel like a backup option, because when someone values you, they act like it, and when they don't, they expect you to keep proving it. There is nothing more powerful than walking away from someone you love not because you stopped caring, but because they never cared enough to match your effort. That walk is hard, it hurts, it feels unfair. But it's necessary because your energy deserves to be invested where it's returned, not where it's drained. You don't need to keep explaining why you're worthy. You don't need to argue your case. You don't need to convince anyone to stay. Real connection doesn't need selling. It just needs two people who recognize what they've found in each other and honor it with presence, with action, with intention. So the next time you find yourself working too hard to prove that you're worthy of someone's time, take a step back. Remember who you are and remind yourself that your value was never a question their ability to see it was. Apologies can be powerful. They can heal wounds, soften anger, and open doors that were starting to close. But there's something that matters far more than the most poetic, heartfelt apology, and that's consistency. Because words may make you feel seen for a moment, but consistency is what allows you to feel safe over time. Anyone can say, "I'm sorry." Anyone can tell you they didn't mean to hurt you. They can promise to do better, to be better, to try harder, and in that moment, part of you wants to believe them. You want the apology to mean something. You want it to be the turning point, the place where things shift and finally become steady. But then time passes, and slowly, quietly, the patterns return, the delayed responses, the changed tone. The moments of emotional distance, the same actions that required the apology in the first place start showing up again, and you begin to realize the apology wasn't a commitment, it was a moment. It was an emotional reaction, not a behavioral change. Consistency, on the other hand, doesn't rely on the high of emotion. It doesn't need to be dramatic or loud. It lives in the details. It shows up in effort, in presence, in reliability. It's someone texting when they said they would, calling when they promised, respecting your time, making sure their words and actions are in alignment. It's easy to say, "I love you," or "I care about you," in the middle of an argument or right after a mistake. It's much harder to back that up by actually showing up every day, even when it's not convenient, especially when it's not convenient, because real love, real respect, real care, they live in the consistency of everyday choices. Someone who is truly sorry will show it with consistency. They won't just say they're going to change, they will, and you won't have to chase the proof. You won't have to keep watching for cracks in the pattern. You won't be sitting in anxiety waiting to see if this time is actually different, because when someone means it, you feel the difference. You start to trust again, not because of what they said once in an emotional moment, but because of what they do repeatedly when nobody's asking for it. You trust because they make you feel safe, not because they begged for another chance, and that kind of trust builds slowly, quietly, over time. On the other side, inconsistency kills connection faster than anger or distance ever could. When someone says one thing but does another, your nervous system starts to carry the weight. You stop feeling grounded around them. You begin to second guess everything. You start keeping score not because you want to, but because you feel like you have to protect yourself. And here's what's worse: when inconsistency is paired with repeated apologies, it creates a loop, a cycle that looks like this: hurt, regret, promise, repeat. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the more you begin to internalize the idea that love must come with instability. That pain is just part of the deal, that being let down is something you should get used to, but love isn't supposed to feel like a gamble. It's not supposed to keep you guessing. It's supposed to feel like something you can count on. Something that adds to your life, not confuses it. Something that makes the world a little lighter, not heavier. Consistency doesn't require perfection. It just requires care. It requires effort. It requires someone thinking about how their actions affect you, not just how their words sound when they're trying to fix something. A consistent person isn't perfect, but they are aware. They listen. They remember what you've said. They honor your boundaries. They don't wait for you to fall apart before they start showing up. Apologies might open the door, but consistency is what keeps the door from closing again. You don't need someone who always knows the right thing to say. You need someone who lives in alignment with what they've promised. You need someone whose behavior reflects their words, not just when they're sorry, but when things are normal. when no one's watching, when it would be easy to slip back into comfort, because when someone is truly invested in you, they don't just show up when it's broken. They keep showing up so it doesn't break again. The next time someone tells you they're sorry, pause, not to reject it, not to punish them, but to observe what comes next, because change doesn't happen in a sentence. It happens in behavior, in the quiet, consistent choices that follow the apology. You don't need perfect words, you need honest effort. You don't need someone who knows how to say sorry, you need someone who makes sure you don't keep needing to hear it. And most importantly, you don't need to prove your worth consistent love. You already are. Thank you for being here. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because someone out there might need this reminder today more than you know. Until next time, protect your peace and never settle for less than your worth.